young boy, full of fire and conviction, steps into a movement he believes in. He's drawn to its energy, its defiance, its sense of brotherhood. It feels like a cause, something bigger than himself, but causes have a way of turning on those who serve them, and loyalty is often a one-way street. One man, once a leader in the Proud Boys, learned that lesson the hard way. He gave everything, his time, his reputation, and eventually his freedom. But when the dust settled, when the rallies and riots faded into the past, when he sat alone in a prison cell, he started asking himself, was it worth it? And more importantly, where was Trump now? At one point, he would have done anything for Trump. He believed in the message, the fight against the so-called deep state, the idea that the 2020 election was stolen. He marched, he shouted, he led others into battle. January 6th was supposed to be the ultimate stand, but instead it was the beginning of the end. Convictions rolled in. Sentences were handed down. Leaders of the Proud Boys faced years, decades behind bars. And yet, Trump, the man they claimed to fight for, barely mentioned them. No pardons, no help, just silence. Reality hit hard. The movement that once seemed unstoppable was fractured, and for some, the bitterness set in. Betrayal isn't always about a knife in the back. Sometimes it's just about realizing that the person you fought for never really fought for you. So what did this former Proud Boy do? He talked. He exposed the inner workings of the group. He admitted things he once swore he'd never say. He turned on the very ideology he once defended. Some called it survival. Others called it the ultimate act of disloyalty. But in the end, one question remained. If Trump never truly stood by them, were they really betraying him or just finally waking up? Host, leaning forward, voice lowering. The realization didn't come all at once. At first there was still hope that Trump would intervene, that he'd speak out, that maybe even a pardon would come. But as the months dragged on, that hope turned into resentment. Clips of Trump at rallies laughing, promising to take care of his supporters, then transitioning to news footage of Proud Boys receiving harsh prison sentences. One by one, the sentences piled up. 10 years, 15 years, 22 years. Proud Boys who once believed they were heroes found themselves labeled criminals, extremists, domestic terrorists. And Trump? He was preparing for another election, shaking hands, making deals, while his former soldiers rotted in prison cells. For one Proud Boy, that was the breaking point. Insert dramatic pause, cut to court footage or prison interview. Maybe it was self-preservation. Maybe it was revenge. But he flipped. He started talking. He named names. He detailed meetings, plans, communications, things the government had struggled to prove. And with every word, he drove a deeper wedge into the movement that once called him a brother. Show screenshots of court documents, headlines about testimony. What he revealed sent shockwaves through the far right. He exposed not only how the Proud Boys coordinated, but also how Trump's rhetoric fueled their actions. And he made one thing painfully clear. Many in the group believed, deep down, that they were acting on Trump's orders. But Trump never gave them direct support. Flashback clip of Trump in interviews, distancing himself from extremist groups. When the FBI came knocking, when the trials began, when families were torn apart, Trump was nowhere to be found. That's when the betrayal cut both ways. Host, voice somber. So who really betrayed who? The Proud Boy who flipped? Or the man who left his most loyal followers to take the fall? Show split screen of Trump on a golf course, while Proud Boys sit in court, faces grim. One thing is clear. The so-called brotherhood, the movement, the loyalty, it was never about them. It was about him. And when they were no longer useful, they were discarded. Host, staring into camera. The Proud Boys thought they were fighting for something bigger. But in the end, they were just pawns in someone else's game. And when you realize you've been used, when you realize the person you swore loyalty to never really cared. That's when the real betrayal begins. Closing montage, slow zoom out on prison bars, Trump rally fades into background noise. Host, final words. Loyalty is a dangerous thing, because sometimes the person you're most loyal to is the first one to abandon you. Fade to black, end credits. Black screen fades in with slow, ominous music. The sound of a gavel echoes. Text on screen. When loyalty is a one-way street, the only way out is betrayal. Host reappears, now standing in a dimly lit studio, leaning against a desk. So, what happens next? What happens when a movement fractures, when its members turn on each other, when they realize they were nothing more than disposable assets in a political game? The Proud Boy who flipped isn't the only one. Behind closed doors, others are making deals, cooperation agreements, testimonies. Some do it for reduced sentences. Others do it out of bitterness, realizing they were left behind by the man they once idolized. Clip of Trump in an interview, brushing off questions about the Proud Boys. Trump barely mentions their names anymore. He distances himself, downplaying their role. He calls January 6th a protest, but he's not standing outside the prison doors demanding their release. He's not funding their legal battles. He's not visiting their families. Show letters from imprisoned Proud Boys pleading for Trump's support. Many of them believed he would never abandon them. Now, they see the truth. Some still hold out hope, waiting for a pardon, waiting for recognition. But others, they've decided to save themselves. And the consequences of that decision are massive. Graphic showing Trump's legal troubles, overlapping with Proud Boys' court cases. These testimonies, these betrayals, they're providing ammunition for prosecutors. They're filling in the missing pieces. They're proving intent, showing coordination, unraveling the narrative that January 6th was just a spontaneous event. News clips discussing the impact of informants flipping on Trump's inner circle. This isn't just about the Proud Boys anymore. This is about Trump himself. Host leans forward, staring directly into the camera. Because if enough people turn on him, if enough people decide that protecting him isn't worth their own destruction, then the very empire he built on loyalty could come crashing down. Footage of Nixon's resignation, then cut to modern headlines about Trump's legal battles. History has a way of repeating itself. The question is, will Trump's most loyal followers be the ones who ultimately bring him down? Final shot, slow fade to an image of a prison cell, then a Trump rally, then complete darkness. Text on screen. Loyalty is a dangerous thing, and sometimes survival means breaking it. Fade to black. Music stops. End credits roll. Black screen lingers for a few seconds. Then the sound of static cuts in. A voice recording plays. One of the Proud Boys speaking in court, his voice shaky but firm. Recorded voice. I believed in him. I believed we were fighting for something real, but when it all fell apart, he wasn't there. None of them were. Host reappears, now in a darkened room, the only light coming from a screen showing footage of the Capitol riot. This is where the real story begins. Because betrayal isn't just about one man flipping, it's about an entire movement coming undone. Show clips of various Proud Boys members in court, heads down, hands in cuffs. One by one, they've started to break. The pressure is too high. The sentences are too long, and the realization is too painful. Trump was never going to save them. Clip of Trump speaking at a rally. If you're in trouble, I wish you well, but I can't get involved. That's what stings the most. Not the prison time, not the legal fees, not the media vilification. It's the silence. The realization that they fought for a man who never truly fought for them. Show footage of Trump's luxury lifestyle, his golf courses, private jets, rallies with adoring fans, juxtaposed with prison bars and mugshots of Proud Boys. While they sit behind bars, he's free. While their families struggle, he's making millions. And while they believed they were part of something greater, he moves on to the next crowd, the next election, the next group of people willing to fight for him. Host, shaking his head. Some of them see it now. They understand the game. And that's why they're turning. Not just against Trump, but against the entire narrative that led them here. Fade to montage of right-wing figures reacting to these betrayals, some calling them cowards, others admitting we were lied to. These aren't just anonymous Proud Boys anymore. Some of these men were leaders, organizers, key figures in the movement, and the more they talk, the worse it gets. Not just for Trump, but for the entire structure that propped him up. Show. A timeline of Trump's upcoming legal battles, potential court testimonies, and the growing list of former allies turning against him. And here's the biggest question. If even the most loyal foot soldiers are flipping, how long until the generals do the same? Clip of former Trump advisors now cooperating with investigators. When self-preservation kicks in, loyalty becomes meaningless. And in the end, the people who once chanted his name, who once fought in his honor, who once believed they were untouchable, might just be the ones who bring him down. Host. One last intense stare into the camera. The Proud Boys thought they were making history. They were. Just not the way they expected. Final scene. Slow zoom out from a prison cell, the sound of a door locking echoes. Text on screen. Betrayal is a two-way street, and the road always leads to the truth. Fade. To black silence. Host stands in a dimly lit room, arms crossed, expression serious. The screen behind him shows a split image. On one side, a Proud Boy in handcuffs. On the other, Donald Trump at a rally, smiling and waving to the crowd. Host. So, in the end, who really betrayed who? Was it the Proud Boy who flipped, who decided that sitting in a prison cell for a man who wouldn't even say his name wasn't worth it? Or was it Donald Trump who encouraged the fight, embraced their loyalty, only to turn his back when things got too real? The truth is, this isn't just about one man turning on Trump. It's about an entire movement waking up to a harsh reality. When things got bad, when the courts handed down heavy sentences, when families were torn apart, Trump was nowhere to be found. No pardons, no legal defense fund, no rallies demanding justice for the people who stood by him. Just silence, and that silence spoke louder than any words ever could. The Proud Boys thought they were warriors in a fight to save America. But when the battle was over, they weren't treated like heroes. They were discarded, forgotten, left to fend for themselves. And now some of them are realizing the only way out is to talk, to betray the very cause they once risked everything for. But is it really betrayal? Or is it survival? That's the question history will have to answer. One by one, we've seen them flip. We've seen the anger turn to regret, the loyalty turn to resentment. Some of them still cling to the hope that Trump will come through for them, that he'll recognize their sacrifice. But deep down, they know better. Because at the end of the day, Trump has only ever been loyal to one person, himself. And maybe that's the real betrayal. Not the Proud Boys flipping, not the testimony, not the confessions. The real betrayal was believing in someone who never really cared about them in the first place. So what happens next? More will turn, more will speak. And piece by piece, the narrative will unravel. What started as a movement built on loyalty will collapse under the weight of its own betrayals. The same men who once stood in the front lines for Trump may be the very ones who bring him down. Maybe that's justice. Or maybe that's just the price of blind loyalty. Host takes a deep breath, looking into the camera one last time. History is being written right now, and when the final chapter is told, one thing will be clear. No one is untouchable. Not the Proud Boys and not Donald Trump. Final fade to black, sound of a prison door slamming shut.